From the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C.
I'm Cheryl Fox with the Manuscript Division of the Library of Congress, and on behalf of the Library of Congress, welcome to the 2013 National Book Festival. We hope that you're having a wonderful day, celebrating the joy of reading here on the National Mall. Before we begin, I want to inform you that the pavilion's presentations are being filmed for the Library of Congress website and for their archives. Please be mindful of this as you enjoy the presentation. In addition, please do not sit on the camera risers that are located in the back of the pavilion. Thank you. It is my pleasure to be able to have the opportunity to introduce Christopher Myers, a writer and illustrator. He lives in Brooklyn, New York. He's currently working on a film that he's working on in Africa. He's a graduate of Brown University. Myers has illustrated books by diverse authors, including E.E. Cummings, Lewis Carroll, Zora Neale Hurston, as well as his father, Walter Dean Myers, who I would have to mention that Walter Dean Myers is the third National Ambassador for Young People's Literature here at the Library of Congress. As a young man, Myers observed and assisted his father on book projects. In 1997, he illustrated Walter Dean Myers' Shadow of the Red Moon. In 1998, he and his father collaborated on Harlem, which was honored with both a Caldecott Honor and a Coretta Scott King Honor. Myers illustrated his father's book, Looking Like Me, which was published in 2009, and books that he has written and illustrated include Fly, published in 2001, Wings, published in 2000, and Coretta Scott King Honor book, Black Cat, published in 2000. Basketball is something that both Christopher and his father enjoy and have written about. His book, H.O.R.S.E, A Game of Basketball and Imagination, received a 2013 Coretta Scott King Illustrated Honor. And it's my pleasure to welcome Christopher Myers.
Good afternoon, everyone. How you guys doing? Good, good. So, I was asked to do a book about basketball. I wonder why. People say, oh, you're 6'7" or so. You should be some good at playing ball. And I will tell you the truth, I'm fairly useless. I will foul you if you do want to play ball. Do you play ball? No? If you did, though, I would foul you. You should know this. But what I am good at, what I am all right at, is I'm good with a pen. I'm good at telling stories. I'm good at making pictures that tell stories, and I'm good at writing these stories. And I think that something that we're doing as a country, and I feel the need to say something about us as a country because we're here at the National Book Festival, so we're supposed to say something that's very countrywide, I assume, you know. We're giving some short shrift to the idea of how useful creativity can be. So when they asked me to do a book about basketball, I wanted to do a book about the basketball players I grew up with, who are some of the most creative people you will ever see. You may ask, how do I know they're creative? It's because, as I said, I'm not very good at playing basketball, and the many ways that they came up to tell me that I was not very good at playing basketball were some of the most creative. My mother can play better than you. My grandmother plays better than you. My great-grandmother who passed away plays better than you. This is a kind of creativity. It's black creativity, but it's also the creativity of people who are involved in their bodies, the people who are involved in sports, just as there's a creativity behind the technological jobs that they're always touting, that we need to train our young generation in technology and this kind of thing, and they want to teach everybody how to use an iPad. How old are you? 6? Do you know how to use an iPad? Yes. 6 years old, knows how to use an iPad, all types of creativity happening in that use of technology. So I wanted to come out here and talk about both this book, H.O.R.S.E, and the kinds of creativity that we all engage in every day. Everyone out here who has ever balanced a budget or a checkbook knows what it means to be creative. Every kid who has ever lied, who here has lied to their parents? Wrong. Now you know. Now you know. You have been creative. And I feel like we need to encourage this in our children, this kind of creativity, this kind of speaking that is specific. Because what we lose when we lose our creativity is we lose the specificity of what we're thinking, what we're feeling. So for example, if I spoke to this young woman, what's her name? What's your name? Gabriella. If I spoke to Gabriella, and I said, Gabriella, how you feeling? Gabriella says, I'm sad. That's one way of saying it. But let us insert some creativity within that. So Gabriella says, I feel lower than the bottom of my shoe. All of a sudden, we get a clearer idea of who Gabriella is. I don't know what's making you sad. I'm sorry for you. I feel for you. But we get a clearer idea of what we're trying to say. And I think that in this world in which everyone has every kind of communication device, from cell phones to email to et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, we need to remember that communication in the end is about creativity. So I'll talk to you a little bit about how this book came to be. I have a best friend. His name is Kambui. He's about my height. And we go and we play ball a lot. And so one day we were playing this game, H.O.R.S.E. And do we know what H.O.R.S.E is? Okay, some places they call it ghost. Some places they call it any other word with like 5 letters. Kids who spell very well call it like chrysanthemum. But it's a basic game in which I do a shot, then you take your shot, and then whoever misses the shot has to get a letter. So you get horse, start with H, okay? So Kambui, as I said, he's one of my aces, brother, about my height. He's also an artist. And so when we start to play horse, it's a special kind of game. Because some kids just go up and I'm gonna do a left-handed layup. I know that wasn't my left hand, but I was thinking, okay. But when Kambui and I play, we start talking conceptually, okay? So the first thing we say is, you see that rock there? I'm gonna dribble that rock. I know it's a stone. I know it doesn't bounce. I'm gonna dribble the rock though. Then I'm gonna throw it through which pavilion is that over there? All right, I'm gonna throw it through that pavilion over there. The teens and children's pavilion, throw it right through there. Teach a small child over there how to play ball, then he will shoot it, a left-handed layup as such. And do you see what we do is what we add the creativity in what we're doing. And every one of you as a parent, and every one of you as a child, you are engaged in a world of creativity. Every story you have told, every little baby, every person like this one over here, who I took a photo with earlier, yes, I'm pointing at you. We are engaged in a world of creativity, and it's up to us to recognize that that creativity is happening. That creativity is important to our lives, that creativity is central to what we do. If you play basketball, if you write, if you're a painter, if you do taxes, if you deal with your parents or your children, you are dealing with a world of creativity. I've come to the National Book Festival a few times, and I'm always, always, always impressed that we have a country in which this kind of creativity is celebrated, that everyone brings out their kids to talk about books. I have a friend visiting me from out of town. She's from Vietnam. And in Vietnam, there's a censorship regime, and there's if you want to publish something, you have to run it by the police, you have to run it by this. We don't have to do that here. That's a gift that we have. I was in Sudan last year, and we talked with young writers who said, we don't have a publishing company, much less someone to celebrate the kind of books that we want to do. This is the gift of our country, that we get to be creative. And so let us remember that. Let us remember that with our children. Let us remember that with our daily lives. And so this is what I do, is I go around. I'm not a good ball player, but I'm pretty darn good with a pen. And that's what it all boils down to. So if you have a child that's good with a pen, tell them to continue. Do I have any questions about how to make books, about what kind of books I make, about working with my pop? Anybody? We got a mic. Somebody use it. Don't make me look crazy. Oh, y'all are wrong. That's just wrong. What's the sign?
I have a question.
Wrong. Yes.
What influence did your father play on what you decided to do?
Okay. When I was a kid, my father's name is Walter Dean Myers. He's a pretty big-time writer. He works all the time. And when I was a kid, I watched him. And I watched him get up and go to work. And his journey from his bedroom to work is about as big as this stage. He gets up. Around here, he starts to scratch his nose. And about here, he's at work. And I loved that. And I loved that he could spend that time with me, that he spent that time telling stories, and that telling stories was his job. My grandfather, he didn't read. He never learned to read, really. And his whole life he spent working with his back. He was a strong man. He did some of the hardest work, and he did it well. But he always said to me, and he said to my father, if you can work with your hands, if you can work with your brain. And that's the gift of this. And so I wanted to follow in Pop's footsteps, to tell stories of men like my grandfather, to tell stories of people who couldn't tell their stories. I mean, one of the things that faces me particularly, and us as a community of African Americans, is oftentimes people don't tell the kind of stories we want to tell about us. For example, when I did this book, H.O.R.S.E, I wanted to do a book that was playful for young black kids. Because every third book out there I found was something real heavy. And there are some heavy parts to our history. I'm the first one I've studied it. But at the same time, kids I know play ball and want to have fun and be creative. And I wanted to make that space for our children. And that's part of what we do as authors, as illustrators, is make space for the kids that we want to be and that we were once.
Hello.
Hey, how we doing?
Mike for short people, never thinking about those big people.
I know. That's the other community I represent is tall people.
Yes, tall people.
Because we are often underrepresented and misrepresented in the world.
And they always play us short.
Always. It's wrong.
But, I guess twofold question, but it appears that there was a time where books and being able to read wasn't this free, even in this country. And it seems now that it is even more accessible, it seems like our children are not gravitating more towards reading.
Right.
And I think that what promotes being creative. I'd like to know a little bit of your educational background, and then how do we get out the kids to start reading more?
Right. I went to Brown University in Providence. I studied semiotics, which is a fancy word for like art theory. And in terms of how do we get kids to read more, the first thing is for us to recognize that they are already reading. that they are already engaging in storytelling practices, be they video games or, you know, all of these things that sometimes we look at our kids and we say, stay away from that, oftentimes are rife with storytelling practices. When I was a kid, television was the bandit, right? So all of our parents said, oh, you can't watch TV, you can't watch TV. My folks never told me not to watch TV. They told me every time I watched TV, I had to write down everything I saw women doing on TV that day. Everything I saw African Americans doing on TV that day. Everything I saw Asian Americans doing on TV that day. Why? Because this taught me about storytelling. This taught me about how people are telling stories about us as communities. Sometimes you'd have something, you know, growing up in the 80s, you say something like, every time you see Asian Americans, what they're doing on TV that day. In the 80s, you didn't see a lot. And the invisibility was a story in and of itself. And so this is how we get our kids engaged in storytelling, having them understand that there are people telling them stories all the time. I speak in schools from time to time, and you go to a school in Harlem, in Brixton, in London, in Khartoum, in Sudan, and you say to these kids, you say, what do you think about Khartoum? And these little kids, they say, I heard it's dangerous. And you say, how did you think your neighbor, this is where you live? And they say, well, this is what the TV told me about where I live. Then you say, well, who knows better about where you live? You who live in Harlem or the TV? And you get them engaged as storytellers and as writers. Who here writes stories? You raise your hand, Gabrielle. I know you write stories. And this is the thing. That is the quickest way to get our kids reading, is for them to understand that it is their job to tell stories and to be writers and readers. Next question.
Hi, I wonder if you could talk a little bit about your process. Do you, when you're writing and illustrating a book, do you start with the illustrations? Do you start with the writing, or does it depend on the book?
I got you. I start usually with an idea. So I'll give you an example. I speak at a lot of youth prisons. And I do this because I feel like these are schools. Every youth prison in this country has a school associated with it. That's the law. You have to have a school for kids. So you go there and you talk to these kids, and they say to you, they ask you questions. And they always ask me the same questions. They say, what kind of car do I drive? And I'm like, I'm from New York City. I don't. What kind of watch do I have? And I say, I don't. Do I live in a mansion? I don't. If you guys buy more books, then no, I'm sorry. And the idea is that they're asking me, what kind of power do I have? So that becomes the core for me of an idea. I tell them the only power I have, as I said earlier, is I'm really good with a pen. So I'm doing a book now with Hyperion about pens and the power of pens and how useful they are. Because every technology, I go to school sometimes, I say to kids, point out something to me that in this place that was not designed. And everything here, from these tents to the podium to our lovely t-shirts, all types of things. And I want kids to understand that creativity is at the center, so this is where I start. I start with an idea. Then sometimes pictures, then sometimes words, but it's always about supporting the idea. Yes?
On design.
Yes.
You have a very distinctive style of illustrating, so I'm sort of curious about your artistic influences.
Okay, yes. Artistically, I'm influenced by a lot of things. I do a lot of kinds of work. I make most of my own clothes, or at least I take them to someone to be made after I draw pictures. Mostly because I'm tall, and you can go to the big and tall store and buy velour jumpsuits, but I'm not a big velour jumpsuit kind of guy. And so I'm influenced by contemporary art. I'm influenced by old illustrations. Definitely Jacob Lawrence, definitely Jean-Michel Basquiat, definitely Egon Schiele was very big for me for a long time.
Any Ezra Jack Keats?
Of course, Ezra Jack Keats.
Thought so.
I recently wrote an essay for Hornbook about Ezra Jack Keats and Ezra Jack Keats' influence on me. Seeing a young brown face in a book was such a gift for me. So the main thing about creativity, the thing I love about creativity is that it allows you to fold in all of your experience, from illustrated books to fine arts to books I've read to things I've seen to places I've traveled. And so absolutely Ezra Jack Keats and Leo and Diane Dillon as well. All these works. So.
Thank you. Incidentally, my sister is going through Brown's art program right now.
Okay, yeah, it's good. Thank you.
You mentioned your next book,
yes.
The upcoming one with Hyperion. What other stories do you have to tell? What will we see from you?
If I am lucky, I will never get all the stories out of my head that are in them. I'm working on another book right now with a sister who's a ballerina, Misty Copeland, who is the truth. If you guys are interested in ballet, which you should be, because ballet, this woman is maybe 5'1" and one muscle of a human being and can jump from here to the top of the tent. So we're working on a book together right now. I'm also working on a young adult novel about Joan of Arc because, again, you talk about what the idea is. I'm a little disturbed by in the teen literature world. Every book has a young woman who all she cares about is what guy she's gonna like or is going to like her. And young women I grew up around cared about much more than that. So I wanted to have someone that was, to do something serious about that. So yeah. Sir?
Thank you for being here, and I hope your father is doing very well.
Oh, he is.
If you have a choice when you do your next sports book,
yes.
Would you consider doing one on the Harlem Renaissance? The Harlem Wrens?
The Harlem Wrens, yes.
That would be, we need to know more about that history, especially the young people. Absolutely.
The Harlem Wrens were a team during the Renaissance, maybe just after. Yeah. And you know, my nephew, some of the members of the Harlem Wrens, then there's a relationship to the Globetrotters, right? And my nephew, who's 6'9", and still calls me Uncle Chris, which is always strange because he's huge, and he says, "Hello, Uncle Chris." And I'm like, man, I don't know if you can call me, but he played for the Globetrotters for about 5 minutes, and then now he's off playing in Croatia because you can play pro ball a lot of places, evidently. But yeah, absolutely, I think that's definitely a history and a kind of a wild, fun story that I'd love to share with kids. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Hi, thanks for coming today.
Oh, glad to be here.
I was wondering if you could indulge us and read a little bit from H.O.R.S.E.
Oh, sure. I mean, okay, I'm all good. So these are two young brothers. One is supposed to be, it has a hairstyle like I used to have when I was a kid, and the other one is like my friend Kambui, right? So one day at the basketball court, hey, you want to play a game of H.O.R.S.E? H.O.R.S.E? Yeah, that game where one person shoots any kind of shot. Layup, jumper from half court, bounce shot, whatever. The other player has to shoot the same shot or else the player gets a letter. Spell horse and it's giddy up, you're out. Right, we call it ghost where I come from, but the game's the same. You start. Okay. Layup with my eyes closed. Wait. That's how you play? That's just too easy. We're gonna be here all day. Oh, I was just starting easy. I figure I'd give you a chance before you got horsed or ghosted or whatever. Don't be easy on me now. Be easy on yourself. Maybe you want to practice a little first. I do not need to practice to beat some old ghost chump. Why don't you start? Okay, I'm gonna stand here at half court with my back to the hoop, and I'm gonna skyhook this ball clear across the court into that basket with my eyes closed, standing on one foot over my left shoulder. Didn't know I could go left, did you? Or you probably a specialist in left. Left back, left behind, left out. Well, school is starting now. Get a pencil, because I'm going first. You see that building over there? Way over there? The white building? No, the one next to it. I can barely make out the windows. Yep, that's the one. I'm gonna climb to the roof of that building, up 437 flights of stairs. And when I get there on the roof of the building, 437 stories high, I will first calculate the wind speed and direction. Then, ever so carefully, I will stand on one tiny tiptoe, balance myself on the topmost corner of the 437-story building and shoot a perfect layup with my left foot. Thank you guys so much. I'll be signing shortly wherever they tell me. At 4 o'clock, I'll be signing. Please come by, and if you have any questions, I'm here for a few minutes too. Down to talk to anybody. Thank you so much.
This has been a presentation of the Library of Congress. Visit us at loc.gov.